Sometimes I want to roll myself up in a little burrito and pretend that I'm a breakfast sandwich burrito thing. You know what I'm saying?
What kind of meat would you be if you were in a burrito?
Questionable.
Dog meat.
Ooh.
Well, at least, well, I mean, you know, at least that's, you can eat that. I want to be the questionable meat. I'm like, is this gonna make me die if I eat this? You know, like I should come with a warning sticker, you know, to all the libs out there.
To the libs.
all the libs should know.
Stupid.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm just trying to keep the vibes up before we get really sad. Welcome to Haunts, Graves, and Omens.
Welcome.
My name is... welcome. Hi.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Hi.
My name is Fred Stewart, and with me, as always, my lovely co-host.
Hi. It's me.
It's Taylor.
Taylor.
Yeah. And with us running camera and sound is Marty Cowick. All right.
You ruined the flow of things, and I just got
Yeah.
I couldn't. I just
Hi, it's me. It's Marty Cowick. Hi. What else do you want from me?
105.9, the Marty Cowick. Yeah. We also have a watcher and listener sitting in the corner. She's over there.
Yeah.
She's just watching. She's just watching.
She just want to yell to the camera.
I can't turn the camera.
Yeah, there she is. She's in the
said
corner.
hi.
There's too much shit to move around to fucking get the
too
camera
much.
set up. But welcome to Haunts, Graves, and Omens. This is going to be, you joined at an absolute terrible time. This is going to be part 2 of Kids Who Kill. I have no updates from the arson case that we talked about last week. There's no updates regarding that case currently, but the 9-year-old who is being charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder. Still no update on that. When we do get an update, I'll be sure to let y'all know. Last week, we kind of talked about a multitude of different cases. We talked about the Slenderman stabbing. We talked about the Heath High School shooting back in the early 90s. And we just started getting into the mindset of Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris of the Columbine shooting, the Columbine massacre, excuse me. Kind of started talking about their preparation into the shooting, getting their pipe bombs ready, their mindsets, the preluding signs of the massacre to come. So this is going to be a heavy fucking episode. So if you don't want to listen to that, then I recommend listen to the Yowie episode or go to listen to the one where I talk about Japanese cryptids and ghosts. Talk about ghosts that likes to sit in the toilet and lick your balls and shit while you're trying to shit. Or the one that offers you would you like the red napkin or the blue napkin? I'll fucking was the white one jerks you off? I remember
One of them. And the other one, they're frantic disembowelment.
Yeah, it's one or the other. So maybe listen to one of those, more lighthearted. But this one is going to be fucking intense. So, has anybody got any news to share before we get into it? Anybody?
Not really.
All right.
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, you guys ready to get into it?
As ready as I can be.
All right. So, where we left off was just 60 seconds until the shooting begins. And within those, those 60 seconds, the way the world looks at U.S. schools and the way Americans look at schools completely changed. And so at 11:19 a.m. On April 20th, the shooting begins. So 11:19 a.m., 17-year-old Rachel Scott and her friend Richard Costaldo were having lunch and sitting on the grass next to the west entrance of the school. Klebold threw a pipe bomb towards the parking lot. The bomb only partially detonated, causing it to give off smoke. Costado thought it was nothing more than a crude senior prank. Likewise, several students during the incident first thought it was they were watching a prank, that it was just some weird joke somebody was trying to play. Then witnesses began hearing "go, go" before Klebold and Harris pulled their guns from beneath their trench coats and began firing. Scott was killed instantly when she was hit 4 times from the rounds fired from Harris's carbine, One shot was to the left temple, instantly killed. Costado was shot 8 times in the chest, arm, and abdomen by both Harris and Klebold. He fell unconscious to the ground, and he survived, but was left paralyzed from below the chest. After firing twice, Klebold's Tech 9 jammed. He was forced to temporarily cease shooting to fix it, which he did by reloading a new magazine into his pistol. Meanwhile, Harris took off his trench coat and aimed his carbine down the west staircase in the direction of 3 students. Daniel Robo, Sean Graves, and Lance Kirkland. The students were presumed that they were just paintball guns, and were about to walk up the staircase directly below the shooters. Harris fired 10 times, killing Robo and injuring Graves and Kirkland. William David Sanders, a teacher and coach of the school, was in the cafeteria when he heard the gunfire and began warding students. Harris turned towards the west entrance, firing 7 shots into the direction of 5 students sitting on a grassy hillside adjacent to the steps and opposite the west entrance of the school. Michael Johnson was hit in the face, leg, and arm, but ran and escaped. Mark Taylor was shot in the chest, arms, and leg and fell to the ground, where he faked his death. The other 3 escaped uninjured. Klebold then walked down the steps towards the cafeteria. He first shot once at the body of Dan Robo with a shotgun, then came up to Lance Kirkland, who was already wounded and lying on the ground, weakly calling out for help. Klebold says one of the most chilling things throughout this entire shooting, and they do some really scary shit. But he looks down at him and says, "Sure, I'll help you," and shot Kirkland in the jaw with a shotgun. Although nearly fatally injured, Kirkland would survive. Graves, paralyzed beneath the waist, had crawled into the doorway of the cafeteria's west entrance and collapsed. He rubbed blood on his face and played dead. After shooting Kirkland, Klebold walked towards the cafeteria door. He then stepped over the injured Graves to enter the cafeteria. Graves remembers Klebold saying, "Sorry, dude." So nonchalant. Klebold only briefly entered the cafeteria and did not shoot at several people still standing inside. Officials speculate that Klebold went on to check on the propane bombs. Harris was still on top of the stairs shooting, and severely wounded and paralyzed 17-year-old Annie Marie Holschalter as she attempted to flee. Klebold came out of the cafeteria and went back up the stairs to join Harris. They shot once at students standing close to the soccer field, but did not hit anyone. They walked towards the west entrance, throwing pipe bombs in several directions, including one onto the roof. Only a few of these pipe bombs did detonate. Witnesses heard one say, "This is what we always wanted to do. This is awesome." Meanwhile, art teacher Patty Nielsen was inside the school. She had noticed the commotion and walked towards the west entrance with student Brian Anderson. Nielsen had intended to walk outside to tell the 2 students to, quote, knock it off, thinking that they were either filming a video or pulling a student prank. As Anderson opened the first set of double doors, the gunmen shot out the windows, injuring them both with flying glass. Nielsen was hit in the shoulder with shrapnel. Then Anderson and Nielsen ran back down the hall into the library, and Nielsen alerted the students inside to the danger, telling them to get under their desks and keep silent. She dialed 911 and hid under the library's administrative counter. Anderson fell to the floor, bleeding from his injuries, then hid inside the magazine room adjacent to the library. So, within just the span of a few minutes, 3 minutes, at 11:22 a.m., a custodian called Deputy Neil Gardner, the assigned resource officer to Columbine High School, on the school radio, requesting assistance in the student parking lot, in the senior parking lot. He's the one that usually has lunch inside the cafeteria, but that day he was having lunch inside his car. If you guys remember from that. The only paved route took him around the school to the east and south on Pierce Street, where at 11:23 a.m., he heard on his police radio that a female was down, and he assumed that she had been struck by a car. While exiting his patrol car in the senior lot at 11:24, he heard another call on the radio saying, "Neil, there's a shooter in the school." So, at this point, Harris, at the west entrance, immediately turned and fired 10 shots from the carbine at Gardner, who was about 60 yards away. That's about 55 meters. As Harris reloaded his carbine, Gardner leaned over the top of his patrol vehicle and fired 4 rounds at Harris from a service weapon. Harris ducked back behind the building, and Gardner momentarily believed that he had hit him. Harris then reemerged and fired at least 4 more rounds at Gardner, which missed and struck 2 parked cars before retreating into the building. No one was hit during this exchange of gunfire. Gardner reported on this police radio, "Shots in the building. I need someone in the south lot with me." By this point, Harris had shot 47 times and Klebold had shot 5 times. The shooters then entered the school through the west entrance, moving along the main north hallway, throwing pipe bombs and shooting at anyone they encountered. Klebold shot Stephanie Munson in the ankle, but she was able to walk out of the school. The pair then shot out the windows to the east entrance of the school. After proceeding through the hall several times, the shooting towards and missing any students they saw, they went towards the west entrance and it turned into the library hallway. So, Deputy Paul Smoker and Paul Magor, motorcycle patrolmen of the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, were writing traffic tickets north of the school when the female down call came out at 11:23 a.m. Taking the shortest route, they drove their motorcycles over the grass between the athletic fields, headed towards the west entrance. When they saw Deputy Scott Taborski, Rick Searle, and Kevin Walker following them in their patrol car, they abandoned their motorcycles for safety of the car. The 6 deputies had begun to rescue 2 wounded students near the ball fields when another gunfight broke out at 11:26. As Harris returned to the double doors and again began shooting at Deputy Gardner, who returned fire. From the hilltop, Deputy Smoker fired 3 rounds from a service pistol at Harris, who again retreated into the building. As before, nobody was hit. Inside the school cafeteria, Dave Sanders and 2 custodians, John Curtis and Jay Galatine, initially told students to get under tables, then successfully evacuated students up the staircase leading into the second floor of the school. The stairs were located around the corner from the library hallway in the main south hallway. Sanders then tried to secure as much of the school as he could. Sanders and another student were down at the end of the hallway when he gestured for students in the library to stay before encountering Harris and Klebold, who were approaching the corner of the north hallway. Sanders and the student turned and ran the opposite direction. Harris and Klebold shot them both, with Harris hitting Sanders twice in the back and neck, hitting his teeth on exit, but missing the student. The latter ran into the science classroom and warned everyone to hide. Klebold walked over towards Sanders, who had collapsed, and tossed a pipe bomb, and then returned to Harris up the library hallway. Sanders struggled towards the science area, and a teacher took him into a classroom where 30 students were located. Due to his knowledge of first aid, student Aaron Hansey, who was brought to the classroom from by another teachers despite the unfolding commotion. With the assistance of a fellow student, Kevin Starkey, and teacher Teresa Miller, Hansey administered first aid to Sanders for 3 hours, attempting to stem the blood loss using shirts from students in the room and showing him pictures in his wallet to keep him talking. Using the phone in the room, Miller and several students maintained contact with the police outside the school. As the shooting unfolded, pipe bombs were tossed in the hallways down to the cafeteria. Patty Nielsen on the library called 911, telling her students and urging students in the library to take cover under their desks. According to transcripts by her call was received by a 911 operator at 11:25 a.m. So at 11:29 a.m., Harris and Klebold have now entered the library. 52 students, 2 teachers, and 2 librarians were inside. Harris yelled at everyone to get up, loud enough to be heard on the 911 call. And when no one complied, Harris yelled, "Fine, I'll start shooting anyway." I've actually listened to these 911 calls. I've heard these 911 calls before, and they are fucking scary. Like, it gives me like chills thinking about. They're so fucking scary. Harris fired a shotgun twice at a desk. Student Evan Todd was standing near the pillar when the shooters entered the hallway and had just taken cover behind a photocopier. Todd was hit by wood splinters in the eye and lower back, but not seriously injured. He then hid behind the administrative counter. The gunman walked into the library towards the 2 rows of computers. Sitting at the north row was a disabled student named Kyle Vasquez. Klebold fired a shotgun, fatally hitting him in the head and back. But they put down their ammunition-filled duffel bags at the south or lower row of the computers and reloaded all their weapons at this time. They then walked in between the computer rows towards the windows facing the outside staircase. Throughout the massacre in the library, they ordered everyone to get up, said how long they've been waiting to do this. It seems like they were enjoying themselves, shouting things like "woo" after shooting. While ordering the jocks to stand up, one of the 2 said, "Anybody with a white hat or sports emblem on it is dead." Wearing a white baseball cap at Columbine was a tradition among the sports team members. Nobody stood up, and several students tried to hide their white hats. The windows were shot out in the direction of the nearby. The windows were shot out in the direction of recently arrived police. Officers returned fire. The gunman retreated from the windows, and no one was injured. Klebold removed his trench coat and then fired a shotgun at a nearby table, injuring 3 students: Patrick Ireland, Daniel Stevenson, and Mackay Hall. Harris walked toward the lower row of computer desk with his shotgun and fired a single shot under the first desk while down on one knee. He hit 14-year-old Stephen Cornell with a mortal wound to the neck. He moved to the adjacent computer desk, injuring 17-year-old Casey Ruseger with a shot which placed completely through her right shoulder, also grazing her neck and severing a major artery. When she gasped out in pain, Harris just said, "Quit your bitching." Harris then walked to the table south of the lower computer lab with 2 students underneath, Cassie Bernal and Emily Wynot. Harris slapped the surface of the table twice as he knelt and said, "Peekaboo," before shooting Burnell once in the head with a shotgun, killing her. Harris, at this point, held the gun with one hand, and the weapon hit his face in recoil, injuring his nose. Klebold had he done so, and Klebold responded with, "Why'd you do that?" After fatally shooting Bernal, Harris turned towards the next table where Bree Presquel sat next to the table rather than under it. Harris's nose was bleeding. Witnesses later reported that he had blood around his mouth. Harris asked Pasquale if she wanted to die if she responded with a plea for her life. Harris laughed and responded, "Everyone's going to die." When Klebold said, "Shoot her," Harris responded, "No, we're going to blow up the school anyway." Klebold then noticed Ireland trying to provide first aid to Hall, who had suffered a wound to his knee. Ireland tried to help Paul. His head rose above the table. Klebold shot him a second time, hitting him twice in the head and once in the foot. Ireland was knocked unconscious, but survived. Klebold then walked towards another table where he discovered 18-year-old Isaiah Scholes, 16-year-old Matthew Ketcher, and 16-year-old Craig Scott which is Rachel's younger brother, hiding underneath. Klebold called out to Harris that he found a slur and tried to pull Scholes out from under the table. Harris left Pasquale and joined him. According to witnesses, they taunted Scholes for a few seconds, making derogatory racial comments. The gunmen both fired under the table. Harris shot Scholes in the chest, killing him. Klebold shot and killed Ketcher. Though Scholes was not shot in the head, Klebold said, I didn't know black brains could fly that far. Meanwhile, Scott was uninjured, lying in his friend's blood, feigning death. Harris yelled out, "Who's ready to die next?" He turned and threw a cricket onto the table where Hall, Stapleton, and Ireland were located. It landed on Stapleton's thigh. Hall quickly noticed it and tossed it behind them. It exploded into midair. Harris walked towards the bookcase between the west and center sections of the table in the library. He jumped on one and shook it, apparently attempting to topple it, and then shot at the books which had fallen. Klebold walked to the east area of the library. Harris had walked from the bookcase past the center area to meet Klebold. The latter shot the display case next to the door, then turned and shot the closest table, hitting and injuring 17-year-old Mark Kintgen in the head and shoulder. When he turned towards the table, he then turned towards the table to his left and fired, injuring 18-year-old Lisa Kreutz, Lauren Townsend, and Valine Schnur with the same shotgun blast. Klebold then moved towards the same table and fired several shots with his Tech 9, killing Townsend. At this point, the seriously injured Valine Schnur began screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God." In response, Klebold asked Schnur if she believed in the existence of God. When Schnur replied she did, Klebold asked why and commented, "God is gay." Klebold then reloaded and walked away from the table. Take a minute. Just kind of take a second to breathe. Excuse me. Okay.
Yeah.
Pretty gnarly.
It is.
Yeah.
It is fucking. It's dark.
Super gnarly.
And it's so weird to see the, like, I don't know, like, it's this fucking, like, the way they go about, like, the shooting is so bizarre, you know. It's I don't know. There's a lot of questions that will always remain unanswered with this shooting. Like, why was he just, they were going in, they were fucking going to tables and just shooting people in the faces with shotguns. But then he goes up to this lady who he just shot and goes like, "Do you believe in God?" And then she's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Why? God's gay." And then just reloads his gun and walks away. It's like, it's fucking, it just doesn't, it's just so bizarre.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. Harris approached another table where two girls were hiding. He bent down to them and dismissed them as pathetic. Harris then moved to another table. He fired twice, injuring 16-year-old Nicole Nowlin and John Tomlin. Tomlin moved out from under the table, and Klebold then shot him repeatedly, killing him. Harris then walked back over to the other side of the table where Townsend lay dead. Behind the table, 16-year-old girl named Kelly Fleming had Bree Pasquale sat next to in the table rather than beneath it due to the lack of space. Harris shot Fleming with a shotgun, hitting her in the back and killing her. He then shot at the table behind Fleming, hitting Townsend, who was already dead, Kreutz again, and wounding 18-year-old Janetta Park. The shooters moved from the center of the library where they had reloaded their weapons at the table. Harris then pointed his carbine under a table, but the student he was aiming at moved out of the way. Harris turned his gun back on the student and had told him to identify himself. It was John Savage, an acquaintance of Klebold's. He asked Klebold what they were doing, to which he shrugged and answered, "Oh, just killing people." This part in this massacre is probably because there's been a lot of like movies and stuff like relating, like going off this shooting, and it doesn't matter if I'm reading it or if I'm like watching this guy tell this story, or like, you know, hearing this story again, or like seeing it in dramatization. Every single time it's fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
So he's hiding underneath it, and he's hearing all these gunshots, and he's hearing people getting murdered directly next to him. And then his friend just kind of crouches down. He's got a gun in his hand, and just like, "Hey man, what are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, just kill people." It's just like, it's so fucking scary.
Yeah.
So Savage asked if they were going to kill him. However, because of the background noise, Klebold said, "What?" Savage then again asked if they were going to kill him. Klebold said no, and told him to start running. Savage fled, escaping through the library's main entrance and through the cafeteria. After Savage left, Harris turned and fired his carbine at a table directly north of where he had been, hitting in the ear and landing in the hand of 15-year-old Daniel Mauser. Mauser retaliated by either shoving a chair at Harris or grabbing at his leg. Harris fired again and hit Mauser in the center of the face at close range, killing him. Harris then moved to the south and fired 3 rounds under a table, critically injuring 2 17-year-olds, Jennifer Doyle and Austin Eubanks. Klebold then shot once, fatally wounding 17-year-old Corey DePuter at 11:35. There were no further victims. They had killed 10 people in the library and wounded 12.
Jesus.
Yeah. Yeesh. So Klebold was quoted as saying they might start knifing people, though they never did. They headed towards the library's main counter. Harris threw a Molotov cocktail towards the western end of the library, but it failed to explode. They converged close to where Todd had moved after having been wounded. Klebold pulled the chair out from the desk, and then he pointed the Tech 9 at Todd, who was wearing a white hat. Klebold asked if he was a jock. When Todd said no, Klebold responded, "Well, that's good. We don't like jocks." Klebold then demanded to see his face. Todd partially lifted his hat so his face would remain obscured. When Klebold asked Todd to give him one reason why he should not be killed, Todd said, "I don't want trouble." Klebold responded back angrily, saying, "Trouble? You don't even know what trouble is." Todd tried to correct himself. "That's not what I meant. I mean, I don't have a problem with you guys. I never will and never did." Klebold then told Harris he was going to let Todd live, but that Harris could kill him if he wanted. Harris, meanwhile, paid no attention and stated that he and Klebold should head to the cafeteria. Klebold then fired into the open library staff break room, hitting a small television. While Harris was walking away, Klebold said, "One more thing," then picked up the chair beside the library counter under which Patty Nielsen was hiding and slammed the chair down on the computer terminal and library counter. Klebold joined Harris at the library entrance, then walked out of the library at 11:36. Cautiously, fearing that the shooters return, 10 injured and 29 uninjured survivors began to evacuate the library through the north emergency exit door, which led to the sidewalk adjacent to the west entrance. Casey Rusager was evacuated from the library by Craig Scott. She had not been evacuated at this point. Rusager would have likely bled to death from her injuries. So Craig Scott's a fucking hero. Patty Ireland, unconscious, and Lisa Kreutz, unable to move, remained in the building. Patty Nielsen crawled towards the exterior break room, into which Klebold had earlier fired shots and hid in a clubboard. So they kind of after they leave the library, Harris and Klebold entered the science area where they had caused a fire in the empty storage closet. It was extinguished by a teacher who had hidden in an adjacent room. The gunmen then proceeded down the south hallway where they shot into an empty science room. At 11:44 a.m., they were captured on the school security cameras as they re-entered the cafeteria. The recording shows Harris crouching against the rail on the staircase and firing towards the propane bombs left in the cafeteria, and was unsuccessful attempt to detonate them. As Klebold approached the propane bomb and examined it, Harris took a drink from one of the cups left behind. Klebold lit a Molotov cocktail and threw it at the propane bomb. About a minute later, the gallon of fuel attached to the bomb ignited, causing a fire that was extinguished by the fire sprinklers just a few minutes later. They then left the cafeteria at 11:46. So this rampage has been going on for a while. After leaving the cafeteria, they then returned to the main north and south hallways of the school, fired several shots into the walls and ceilings of students and teachers' hidden rooms. They walked through the south hallway into the main office before returning to the north hallway. At 11:56, they returned to the cafeteria and briefly entered the school kitchen. They then returned up the staircase and the south hallway at exactly 12 p.m. They re-entered the library, which was empty of survivors except for the unconscious Ireland and Kreutz. Once inside, at 12:02 p.m., the police were shot at again through the library windows, and they returned fire. Again, nobody was injured in the exchange. By 12:05, all gunfire from the school had ceased. And by 12:08 p.m., both gunmen had killed themselves with self-inflicted gunshot wounds. Harris sat down with his back against a bookshelf and fired a shotgun through the roof of his mouth. Klebold went down to his knees and shot himself in the left temple with his Tech 9. An article by the Rocky Mountain News stated that Patty Nielsen overheard them shout 1, 2, 3 in unison before a loud boom. Nielsen later said that she had never spoken with either of the writers of the article. So, for all we know, it could be, bullshit.
Yeah.
So, in 2002, the National Enquirer published 2 post-mortem photos of Harris and Klebold in the library. Klebold's gun was underneath his body and was and so unseen in the photo, leading to speculation that Harris had shot Klebold before killing himself. However, Klebold's blood was on Harris's legs. Also, before shooting himself, Klebold lit a Molotov cocktail on a nearby table, beneath which Patrick Ireland was laying, which caused the countertop to momentarily catch on fire. Underneath this scorched film material was a piece of Harris's brain matter, suggesting that Harris had shot himself by that point. So, cut back to a few minutes before all that. By 12 p.m., SWAT teams were stationed outside the school, and ambulances started taking the wounded to local hospitals. A call for additional ammunition for police officers in the case of the shootout came at 12:20. Authorities reported pipe bombs by 1 o'clock, and 2 SWAT teams were ordered to enter the school at 1:09, moving from classroom to classroom, discovering hidden students and faculty. They then entered the end of the school opposite to the library, hampered by old maps and unaware of the new wing that had recently been added. They were also could not hear a lot because of the sound of fire alarms. So, meanwhile, families of students and staff were asked to gather at Leywood Elementary School and wait information. All students and teachers and school employees were taken away, questioned, and offered medical care in small holding areas before being bused to meet their family and members at the elementary school.
Yeah, it's pretty hardcore.
Yeah. Some of the victims' family were told to wait on one final school bus that never came. Excuse me. So, sorry. Patrick Ireland had regained and lost consciousness several times after being shot by Klebold. Paralyzed on his right side, he crawled to the library windows where on live television at 2:30 p.m. he stretched out the window, intending to fall into the arms of two SWAT team members standing on the roof of an emergency vehicle. But instead of falling onto those vehicle's roof in a pool of blood, he quickly became known as the boy in the window. The team members, Don Creamer and John Romanek, were later criticized for allowing Ireland to drop more than 7 feet to the ground while doing nothing to ensure that he could be lowering to the ground safely or break his fall. At 2:15 p.m., students placed a sign in the window said "one bleeding to death" in order to alert police and medical personnel of Dave Sanders, located in the science room. Police initially feared it was a ruse by the shooters. A shirt was also tied to the doorknob. At 2:30, this was spotted, and by 2:40, SWAT officers evacuated the room of the students and called for a paramedic. Hansey and Starkey were reluctant to leave Sanders behind. By 3 o'clock, SWAT officers had moved Sanders to a storage room, which was more easily accessible. As they did so, a paramedic arrived and found Sanders with no pulse. He had died of his injuries in the storage room before he could receive medical care. He was the only teacher to die in the shooting. Lisa Kreutz, who was shot in the shoulder, arm, and hand, thigh, remained laying in the library. She had tried to move, but became lightheaded. Crews kept track of time by the sound of the school's bells until police arrived. Kreutz was finally evacuated at 3:22 p.m., along with Patty Nielsen, Brian Anderson, and 3 library staff who had hidden in the rooms adjacent to the library. Officials had found the rest of the individuals killed in the library by 3:30. By 4 p.m., Sheriff John P. Stone made an initial estimate of 25 dead students and teachers, 50 wounded, and referred to the massacre as a suicide mission. So Stone said that police officers were searching the bodies of the gunmen, and they feared that they had used their pipe bombs as booby-trapped corpses, including their own. At 4:30, the school was declared safe. At 5:30, additional officers were called in as more explosives were found in the parking lot and on the roof. By 6:15, officials had found a bomb in Klebold's car in the parking lot. It's set to detonate the gas tank. They then marked the entire school as a crime scene. At 10:40 p.m., a member of the bomb squad who was attempting to dispose of an undetonated pipe bomb accidentally lit a striking match attached to the bomb by brushing against the wall of the ordnance disposal trailer. The bomb detonated inside the trailer, and no one was injured. The bomb squad disarmed the car bomb. Klebold's car was repaired, and in 2006, it was actually put up for auction, which is fucking insane.
Wild.
Excuse me. And that is the... and in the end of it, there was a total of 15 killed, including the shooters. Rachel Scott, Daniel Robo, William David Sanders, Cal Vasquez, Stephen Curnow, Cassie Bernal, Isaiah Scholes, Matthew Ketchner, Laura Townsend, John Tomlin, Kenny Fleming, Daniel Mauser, Corey DePuter, and the 2 fucking scumbags known as Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris.
Just insane.
Yeah. I told you it's going to be a heavy episode, man.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Whew. All right. Is everybody having a good time? Fucking sick to my stomach. Oh,
Yeah, it was pretty.
I made me fucking started to like.
Like, I wish they would have like been captured and like death by 1,000 cuts kind of shit, you know?
Yeah, fucking just give them to the families. Be like, you guys do what you want with them.
Yeah.
So, on the morning of April 21st, bomb squads combed the high school. By 8:30, the official death toll of 15 was released. Their earlier estimate was 10 over the true death toll count, but close to the total count of wounded students. The total count of deaths of students was 12, including the. So this is saying it's different, but it was saying 12 students, but 14 including the shooters. But the 20 students and one teacher were injured as a result of the shooting. 3 more of the victims were injured indirectly. At 10 a.m., the bomb squad declared the building safe for officials to enter. By 11:30 a.m., a spokesman for the sheriff declared the investigation underway. 13 of the bodies were still inside the high school as investigators photographed the building. At 2:30 p.m., a press conference was held by Jefferson County District Attorney David Thomas and Sheriff John Stone, at which they had suspected others had helped plan the shooting. Formal identification of the dead had not yet taken place, but the families of the children thought that they had been killed, had been notified. Throughout the late afternoon and early evening, the dead were gradually removed from the school and taken to Jefferson County Coroner's Office to be identified and autopsied. By 8:50 p.m., the names of the dead were known. An official statement was released naming 15 confirmed deaths and 27 injuries related to the massacre. On April 22nd, the next day, in the following days of the shooting, Rachel Scott's car and John Tomlin's truck became memorials. An impromptu memorial was held in Clement Park. On April 22nd, the cafeteria bombs were then discovered. On April 30th, carpenter Greg Zanes erected 15 6-foot tall wooden crosses in honor of those who had died in the school. Daniel Robro's father cut down the 2 meant for the gunman. There were also 15 trees planted, and he cut those 2 down as well.
Good.
Yeah. And it is kind of interesting too. Later on, like one of the guys who actually survived was like he did like a speech, like at the his like graduation or whatever, and he's like the 13 classmates I lost, and then we also lost 2 other ones because I don't know, just like he's still like those are guys were like I knew, and then they went and did this, It's just like. Yeah. Nah, dude, fuck that. I don't give a fuck. You're instantly dead to me, and hope they're rotting away somewhere. On November 2021, a report leaked to NPR about the year's National Rifle Association convention in Denver. In a series of audio tapes, Wayne LaPierre and other top officials suggested raising $1 million for the victims' families, and the cancellation of the convention was considered by some of the organization. They want nothing to do with it. Also on April 30th, high-ranking officials of Jefferson County and Jefferson County Sheriff's Office met to decide if they should reveal that Michael Guerrera had drafted an affidavit for a search warrant of Harris's residence more than a year before the shootings, based on the previous investigation of Harris's website and activities. That was the website where he was talking about wanting to kill people and shit. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
The affidavit's contents lacked the necessary probable cause. They decided not to disclose this information at a press conference held on April 30th, nor did they mention it in any other way, because they didn't want to mention that they fucked up. Over the next 2 years, Guerrera's original draft and investigative file documents were lost.
Because of course they were.
Of course they were. In September of 1999, Jefferson County Sheriff's investigator failed to find the documents during a secret search of the county's computer system. A second attempt in the late 2000s found copies of the document within Jefferson County's archives. Their loss was termed troubling by a grand jury convened after the file's existence was reported in April 2001. It was concealed by Jefferson County Sheriff's Office and not revealed until September of 2001, resulting from an investigation by the TV show 60 Minutes. 60 Minutes called them out. The documents were reconstructed and released to the public, but the original documents are still missing. The final grand jury investigation was released in September 2004. So, according to the shooter's respective journals and videotapes, it is believed by the investigators that the pair had intended to detonate their pipe bombs in the cafeteria during the busiest lunch hour, killing hundreds of students. After this, they would shoot and stab survivors as well as lob bombs. Bombs in their cars in the parking lot would eventually detonate, killing more students, as well as possibly any police officers, paramedic, firemen, or reporters that had come to the school. However, the bombs in the cafeteria and the cars failed to detonate. Thank God.
Yeah.
Several officials, sources claim they planned to shoot the fleeing survivors in the parking lot, but when the bombs failed, they moved to the staircase on the hill at the west side. Other sources claim the bombs on the staircase were where the massacre began was their preferred spot to wait for the bombs to go off all along. This next part kind of puts it into gravity. A total of 188 rounds of ammunition were fired by the perpetrators during the massacre, firing nearly twice as many as Klebold. Harris had fired his carbine a total of 96 times, 47 shots outside, 36 shots inside, and 13 shots inside the library. Harris also discharged his shotgun 25 times. 21 of those were in the library, and 4 other times just throughout the school. Here, Klebold had fired the Tech 9 handgun 55 times, 3 outside the school, 31 shots inside, and 21 inside the library. Klebold had also fired 12 gauge round from his double barrel shotgun, twice outside, 4 times inside, and 6 times inside the library. Jeez. Law enforcement fired a total of 141 rounds during the exchange of gunfire with the shooters. So, in the wake of the shooting, victims Rachel Scott and Cassie Bernal became regarded as Christian martyrs by even evangelical Christians. Christian churches used the martyr narrative of Scott and Bernal's death to promote themselves and recruit members.
Yeah, fuck those guys.
And you wonder why I'm a Satanist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's such a fucking scummy thing to do, dude.
Yeah.
So fucking scummy. Fuck those people. If you're listening to this, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, that's fucking ridiculous.
So, the closest living witness to Scott's death, Richard Costaldo, has stated Harris asked Scott if she believed in God and murdered her after she answered, "You know I do." But this has been questioned, and Costaldo later stated that he was not sure. Considerable media attention focused upon Bernal, who was killed by Harris in the library, who Harris had reportedly asked, "Do you believe in God?" immediately prior to her murder. Bernal was reported to have responded yes to this question before she was murdered. Emily Wynot, the closest living witness to Bernal's death, denied that Bernal and Harris had an exchange. Joshua Lapp thought Bernal had been queried about her belief, but was unable to correctly point out where Bernal was located and was closer to survivor Valene Schnur during the shootings. Likewise, another witness, Craig Scott, claimed the discussion was with Bernal. However, when asked to indicate where the conversation had been coming from, he pointed where Schnur was shot. Schnur herself claims that she was the one questioned as to her belief in God. There was a shooting in Southern Oregon a few years ago. I would say, God, more than a few years ago at this point. It was the Umpqua College shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I drove past that college that day and saw all the cops and shit outside. Because I was coming back from California and I was like the fuck is going on there? Because it was just hella shit, like commotion and cop cars and shit. And later found out that that's what it was.
Yeah, I actually listened to, because it came out as like a shots fired call, and I have a scanner like kind of thing, so it'll like notify me if there's like a lot of people listening to something, and all it was shots fired. So I popped it on and I listened to that entire fucking thing as it was happening, and it was fucked up. Of them with their exchange with the gunman and all that. But the guy did the same thing that they did in Columbine, where they're like, "Do you believe in God?" And they would come up and be like, "Yeah." He would shoot him, and it's just fucking pretty spooky.
Wild.
Yeah. So class at Columbine were held at a nearby Chatfield Senior High for the remaining of the 3 weeks of the end of the 99 school year. In August of 1999, the students returned to the school, and Principal Frank DeAngelis led a rally of students in the clad of shirts stating, "We are Columbine." 6 months after the shootings, Annie Marie Hallstetter's mother took her own life. Several former students and teachers had PTSD. Greg Barnes, a 17-year-old student who had witnessed Sanders getting murdered, also committed suicide in May of 2000. Survivor Austin Eubanks, who was injured in the shooting, became heavily medicated and developed an opiate addiction. Eventually overcoming and later speaking publicly about the addiction, Eubanks died from an accidental overdose in 2019 at the age of 37. Jeez. So, in the immediate aftermath of the shooting, conspiracy theories and unfounded claims were made by several anti-government movements and extremist religious and political movements, such as, believe it or not, the Westboro Baptist Church.
Wow, surprise.
And televangelist Jerry Falwell Sr. Wow, fucking surprising. Color me surprised.
Honestly, I'm shocked. That has never happened a day.
Oh, the Westboro Baptist immediately hopping on something that they have no idea what the fuck they're talking about and saying crazy shit.
Yeah, that's never happened. I don't understand. That's crazy.
Yeah. I'm going to read this next statement word for word. Because usually I will, redact some stuff that is offensive. Almost always I do. But I'm just going to read this to you word for word. So you can hate the Westboro Baptist Church as much as I hate the Westboro Baptist Church. And I have no problem with religion. And that's coming from a Satanist. If you believe in what you want to believe in, as long as you're helping people, that's all I care about. But the Westboro Baptist doesn't help anybody. And they're fucking scumbags. So the Westboro Baptist founder, then leader, Fred Phelps, unfoundedly claims that both Harris and Klebold were gay, saying, 2 filthy fags slaughtered 13 people at Columbine High. Falwell also claimed that Harris and Klebold were gay, then he retracted it afterward. I don't know why, but it's just like...
It's not...
You're not helping anybody. No. You're not helping anybody do anything other than be a scumbag. Conspiracy theories also arose from the anti-gun control activists and extremists claiming that the massacre had either been staged or that both Harris and Klebold had been government agents aiming at promoting tougher gun control legislation. Does that sound fucking familiar to everybody?
Yeah.
This sounds very familiar to like every shooting that happens where somebody's like, it's part of the government, they're trying to take our guns.
Yeah.
No, it's just crazy fucking people with guns that are deranged psychopaths that could have been stopped a long time ago. Other conspiracies point to a mysterious third shooter that has never been identified. Another anti-Semitic conspiracies pointed to the massacre being a Jewish conspiracy due to Klebold's mother being Jewish. Doesn't make any fucking sense. Political commentator and conspiracy theorist Alex Jones.
Oh, good.
Once applied, the U.S. government had perpetrated Columbine, and also claimed that the Columbine shootings were 100% false flag.
I feel like I remember him saying that, and he got fucking reamed for it.
Yeah.
Because, like, what the fuck?
Yeah. So, fucking... And he just kept doing it about school shootings until finally some parents were like, hey, how about this? Fuck you. And then they just grilled his ass.
Yeah, I want to say it was
Sandy Hook.
Yeah.
Sandy Hook shooting.
Yep. That was the one that I think especially made people upset,
Yeah, fuck yeah.
which is completely understandable.
If he would have just stayed, like, kept his mouth shut about shit like that and would have just been like, there's interdimensional space wizards controlling the third dimension, like, I'd been like, all right, this guy's kind of quirky. But then he started saying really fucked up shit. Yeah. And it's like, you went from just a wacky internet character to a fucking psychopath, and I don't like that. So the shooting was obviously planned as a terrorist attack that would cause the most amount of deaths in U.S. history, according to them. But the motive has never been ascertained with a degree of certainty. In a letter provided on the May 15th report of the Columbine attack, Sheriff John Stone and Under Sheriff John A. Dunway wrote that they, quote, cannot answer the most fundamental question, why? In the days following the event, media speculation regarding the killer's motives was rife. Media reports were decimated and suggested various motives of the killers, although all theories were largely unsubstantiated and turns out to be myths. The reports included blaming bullying, goth culture, video games, Marilyn Manson, and targeting jocks and minorities. The other rumors were spread in the local area, but not largely disseminated by the media, such as the false claims that the students and the killers were actually bullied because they were homosexual. That is a thing that I fucking hear so much about this shooting, and it's just so annoying. Like, they were bullied. No, they fucking weren't. These fucking scumbags, dude. You think two dudes who went in and killed fucking 14 people and tried to kill so many more? They're like, we're doing it because we got bullied by one person, so we're gonna try to kill 500 fucking people. No, they were deranged psychopaths. Fucking Eric Harris had that goddamn website for so long, and he'd been planning it forever. He was just a psychopath, and he sucked his friend into it because his friend's just as fucking stupid as he is. Yeah. Sorry. I needed to vent for a second. I fucking hate those guys so much, and I hope that when I die, and if there is an afterlife, I hope I get to go down there and go piss on them. So the FBI concluded that the killers had mental illness. Surprise, surprise. Harris was a clinical psychopath, and Klebold had depression. Dwayne Fusler, the supervisor in charge of the Columbine investigation, would later remark, I believe Eric went to the school to kill and didn't care if he died, while Dylan wanted to die and didn't care if others died as well. And I absolutely agree. Mm-hmm. In April of 1998, a year prior to the shooting, as part of his diversion program, Harris wrote a letter of apology to the owner of the van he and Klebold broke into earlier that year. Around the same time, he derided the owner of the van in his journal, stating that he believed he had the right to steal something if he wanted it. By far, the most prevalent theme in Klebold's journals was his wish for suicide and private despair at the lack of success with women, which he refers to as an infinite sadness. Ain't got no bitches, huh? That's kind of like fucking. It's kind of like the oh god, Timmy McVeigh.
Oh yeah.
You know, he's like, I can't get any women. I can't get women, and then he goes and they fucking kill people. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Just fucking. It's fucking stupid.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're a fucking psychopath. Klebold reportedly documented his desires to kill himself, and his final remark in the basement tape shortly before they attacked. He resigned statement made as he glances away from the camera. Just know I'm going to a better place. I didn't like life too much. The FBI theory was used by David Cullen in his 2009 book Columbine. Harris was depicted as the mastermind, having a masochistic level superiority complex, and hoping to demonstrate his superiority to the world. Klebold was a follower who primarily participated in the massacre as a means to supply at the end of his life. The theory was and is still met with criticism. Critics cite the fact that Klebold, not Harris, was the first to mention a killing spree in his journal. They also cite evidence that Harris was depressed as well, such as this prescription for antidepressants mentioned here later on. But there have been attempts to diagnose Harris and Klebold with mental illness. Peter Langman believes that Harris was a psychopath and Klebold was schizotypal. Professor Aubrey Immelman, I think that's pronounced it correct. Yeah, that's quite the last name. Published a personality profile of Harris based on journal entries and personal communication, and believes the materials suggested behavior of patterns consistent with malignant narcissism, pathological narcissistic personality disorder with borderline and antisocial features, along with some paranoid traits and unconstrained aggression. Shortly, he's just crazy. That's fucking, opponents of the contemporary psychiatry, like Peter Bregan, claim the psychiatric medications prescribed to Harris may have exacerbated his aggressiveness. Harris had complained of depression, anger, and suicidal thoughts, for which he was prescribed antidepressants. Toxicology reports confirm that Harris had Luvox in his bloodstream at the time of the shooting, whereas Klebold had no medication system. Harris continued his scheduled meetings with his psychologist until a few months before the massacre. So, early stories following the massacre charged the school administrators and the teachers at Columbine High School had long condoned bullying by jocks and explained the motive. The link between bullying and school violence has attracted increasing attention since. Accounts from various parents and school staffers reported bullying in the school. Reportedly, Harris and Klebold were regularly called, excuse me while I say this, called them faggots. Klebold said on the basement tapes, "You've been giving us shit for years," and talked about his father about jocks and stated, they sure give Eric hell. Brown also noted Harris was born with mild chest indent, which made him reluctant to take his shirt off in gym class, and other students would laugh at him. Nathan Vanderau, a friend of Klebold, and Alyssa Owen, who knew Harris, noted that they were picked on. Vanderau recalled a cup of fecal matter was thrown at them once. So yeah, they were picked on, they were bullied, but I'm sure they weren't picked on and bullied more than anybody else in that school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm sure people got it a lot worse. It has been alleged that Klebold and Harris were once confronted by a group of students at Columbine who sprayed them with ketchup and referred them as queers. Klebold told his mother they had been the worst day of his life. According to Brown, this had happened while teachers watched. They couldn't fight back. They wore the ketchup all day and went home covered in it. According to classmate Chad Laughlin, it involved seniors pelting Klebold with ketchup-covered tampons in the commons. Laughlin also stated a lot of tension was in the school came from the class above us. They were people fearful of walking by a table where you knew you didn't belong, stuff like that. Certain groups certainly got preferential treatment across the board. So it's just bullies being bullies, but the way he says that, it seems like it's everyone that comes across there gets fucking bullied. A similar theory was expounded by Brown Books in his on his book on the massacre, No Easy Answers. He noted that teachers commonly ignored the bullying, and that when Harris and Klebold were bullied by the jocks at CHS, that they would make statements such as, "Don't worry, man, it happens all the time." Like teachers not doing anything to fucking help the students. Colin and others, despite the theory of revenge of bullying as a motivation, while acknowledging the perseverance, while acknowledging the bullying in high school including CHS, claimed that they were not victims of bullying. He noted that Harris was more often the perpetrator than the victim of bullying. Wow. What I called it. And the fact that he published on April 19th, 2019, on the eve of the 20-year anniversary of the massacre, Jillian Brockwell in the Washington Post underscored that, contrary to popular view, their attack was not revenge for being bullied. Author Jeff Katz, who published a book on the attack, believes that bullying wasn't the cause. Peter Langman also argues against bullying being the cause of the attack. Other researchers have also argued against the bullying hypothesis, like what I was saying before. These guys were fucking bullies. They got bullied, but usually what happens is the big bullies attack the small little bullies, which these fucking guys were at, and then they were just dogging on other people, and they're just psychopaths. So, these are all. I'm just going to be going through all the causes basically. So rejection was also highlighted as a cause. Social cliques within high schools, such as the Trenchcoat Mafia, were widely discussed. One perception formed that Harris and Klebold were both outcasts who had been isolated from their classmates, prompting feelings of helplessness, insecurity, and depression, as well as a strong need for power and attention. Harris's last journal entry reads, "I hate you people for leaving me out of so many fun things," while Klebold wrote, "The lonely man strikes with absolute rage." In an interview, Brown describes them as the school's worst outcasts, losers of the losers, which is kind of weird to say that they even like kind of bring that up, because when you hear other people's stories of people who actually knew them, they're like, yeah, those guys are my friends. Like Savage, yeah. John Savage, who fucking knew Klebold, like that guy was like his friend. Yeah. You know, like maybe not his best friend, but it's like one of those guys like, oh man, what's up, man? You know, good to see you, or whatever. And they see passing the hallway, what's up, bro? You know. So I can't imagine that, you know, maybe if they were less fucking creepy, then people would have wanted to hang out with them more.
It's fair.
And then the people who bought them the guns and shit, you know, like they had friends. I just don't understand why they even bring that up. The concept, this concept too, has also been questioned, as both Harris and Klebold had a close circle of friends and a wider informal social group. Cullen and Brockwell both also say they were not in the Trenchcoat Mafia and were not isolated with outcasts or loners. Peter Langman concurs by arguing against the pair of being loners and outcasts. Like what I'm saying. I don't think they were loners. I don't think they were outcasts. I think they were just kind of somewhere in the middle, like kind of all the rest of us lived, just kind of floating around, you know.
Kind of.
We got our different cliques, we got our different homies, but we hang out with the same fucking people.
Yeah.
A lot of words. Excuse me.
You're good.
All right. So, some peers, such as Robin Anderson, stated that the pair were not interested in Nazism and did not worship or admire Hitler in any way. However, in retrospect, Anderson also stated that they were many things the pair did not tell friends. Harris did at least revere Nazis, often praising them in his journal. This is kind of a weird one. Scientologist Ralph Larkin has theorized that the massacre was to trigger revolution of outcast students and the dispossessed. Quote, as an overly political act in the name of oppressed students and victimized by their peers, the Columbine shootings redefined such as acts not merely as revenge, but as means of protest for bullying, intimidation, social isolation, and public ritual humiliation. This guy, again, seems to have no idea what the fuck he's talking about. So, in contrast with the theory that the attack was political, one author argues Columbine was also increasingly linked to terrorism after the September 11th attacks, which makes sense. Like, you know, people trying to correlate all that. And then here comes the one that is probably the most known conspiracy about why the shooting took place. And this one is by far one of the dumbest fucking parts of this entire conspiratorial part. So in the late 1990s, Marilyn Manson and his band had established himself as a household name. And as the most controversial rock acts in music history, their 2 album release prior to the massacre were both critical and commercial success. And by the time of their Rock is Dead tour in 1999, the frontman had become a cultural war iconologist and a rallying icon for the alienated youth. Immediately after the massacre, a significant portion of the blame was directed towards the band and specifically towards their outspoken frontman. In the weeks following the shootings, media reported about Harris Cleveland portraying themselves as Trenchcoat Mafia as part of Gothic cult. Early media reports allege that the shooters were fans and were wearing group's t-shirts during the massacre. Although these claims were later proven to be false, news outlets continued to run sensationalist stories with headlines such as "Killers worship rock Killers worship rock freak Manson," and "Devil worshiping maniac told kids to kill."
Jesus Christ.
Okay, no, definitely not how that works.
Not at all how that works.
Speculation in the national media among the public led many to believe that Manson's music and imagery were the shooter's sole motivation, despite the reports that revealed that the two were actually not big fans. Like, I'm sure they probably listened to him every so often. Maybe. Despite this, Marilyn Manson was widely criticized by religious, political, and entertainment industry figures. Under mounting pressure in the days after Columbine, the group postponed their last 5 North American tour dates out of respect to the victims and their families. Manson published his response to these accusations in an op-ed piece for Rolling Stone titled "Columbine, Whose Fault Is It?", which he chastised American gun culture, the political influence of the National Rifle Association, and the media's irresponsible coverage, which he had facilitated to the placing the blame on a scapegoat, being him. After concluding the European and Japanese legs of the tour on August 8th, the band withdrew from the public view on the work on their next album in the 2000s, Holy Wood, and then The Shadow in the Valley of Death, as an artistic rebuttal to the allegations leveled against them. So another thing that they blame for this is video games.
Because of course.
Because
it's
of
always
course.
video games.
Because of course. So violent video games were also blamed. Parents of some of the victims filed sorry, I got like dog nose coming from under the door. I just saw something like poke under the door, and there was a dog nose coming from under the door, or like a paw or something. Parents of some of the victims filed several unsuccessful lawsuits against violent video game manufacturers. Gerald Block believes their immersion in the video game world best explains the massacre, while Brooks Browns disagree that video games caused the massacre. He agrees that elements of the plan came from video games. I play a lot of video games. I was playing a video game like a few minutes before we started filming this, and video games, no, that's not how that works. You know what video games make me do?
Yeah.
They make me tired.
Video games make me want to play more video games and not get up and do anything else.
That's for fucking real, dude. So Harris, we talked about this last episode, but Harris and Klebold were both big fans of the shooter video games such as Doom, Quake, Duke Nukem 3D, and Postal. All of which I have all played. Like, Doom is, you're a fucking, I don't even know what to describe it, like a space marine kind of dude, and you're and not like Halo, but you go into hell and you're killing like you're killing like demons and shit. Quake is like just a classic shooter. Duke Nukem is goofy as fuck, and Postal, that one's a little questionable. That one's a questionable one. It's literally like one of the first kind of GTAs. You can just do whatever the fuck you want and kill shit, whatever. But it's more meant as it seems like a joke. It's not made to be a serious thing. Have you played Postal?
I haven't.
It's not made to be serious. It's meant to be fucking silly and stupid. Sometimes borderline racist. Especially the original one was pretty fucked up. But like, you know, you can take like a cat and use it as a silencer and shit. Like, it's fucking stupid. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Not supposed to make sense. But a file on Harris's computer read the massacre will be, quote, like the LA riots, the Oklahoma City bombing, World War II, Vietnam, Duke and Doom all mixed together. In his last journal entry, Harris wished to get a few extra frags on the scoreboard, which is like a quote to like getting, you know, kills in the game. After the massacre, it was alleged that Harris created Doom and Duke Nukem 3D levels that resembling Columbine High School, but they were never found. So it was reported that they were avid fans of Doom, especially. Harris said that of the massacre, it's going to be like Doom. He also wrote, it was, I must not be sidetracked by my feelings of sympathy, so I'll force myself to believe that everyone is just another monster from Doom. In Harris's yearbook, Klebold wrote, I find similarity between people and Doom zombies. Harris named his shotgun Arlene after a character in the Doom novels. The Tech 9 Klebold used resembled a AB-10, a weapon from the Doom novels that Harris referenced several times. Harris spent a great deal of time creating a large WAD named Tier, German for animal, a song by Rammstein, calling it his life's work. The WAD was uploaded to the Columbine school computer and AOL shortly before the attack, and it appears it has been lost. The other game mentioned specifically by Harris was about the massacre was Duke Nukem 3D. The game has pipe bombs, and one of the enemies is the pig cop. Brooks Brown wrote that the pipe bombs were set on the halls of the school with the intentions of causing a chain reaction, because that's what happens in Duke Nukem 3D. But Brown also wrote that they shot wildly because it works. And Duke Nukem 3D, they're trying to blame video games really hard there. Following the Columbine shooting, schools across the United States instituted new security measures such as see-through backpacks, metal detectors, school uniforms, and security guards. Some schools implemented the numbering of school doors in order to improve public safety responses. Several schools throughout the the country resorted to requiring students to wear computer-generated IDs. Schools have also adopted a zero-tolerance policy approach to possession of weapons and threatening behalf of other students. Despite the effort, several social science experiments feel the zero-tolerance approach adopted in schools has been implemented too harshly and won unintended consequences, creating other problems. Despite the safety measures that were implemented in the wake of the tragedy at Columbine, school shootings have continued to take place in the United States. Just to name a small handful, very, very small handful, Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook Elementary, Stoneman Douglas High School, and Robb Elementary School. That's a very small handful over a giant mountain. That is school shootings.
Less than generally what happens in a month. Like that's such a small handful.
If you want to look it up, look how many school shootings happened last year.
Too many.
Way too many. One, there's too many. Some schools renewed existing anti-bullying policies. Rachel's Challenge was started by Rachel Scott's parents and lectures at school about bullying and suicide. That actually came to my high school when I was in high school, and I do remember that. And her parents actually told the story. She was one of the first. She was the first to be killed during the shooting. Police departments reassessed their tactics and now train for Columbine-like situations after criticism of the slow response and progress of the SWAT teams during the shooting. Police followed a traditional tactic at Columbine: surround the area, set up a perimeter, contain the damage. That approach has been replaced by a tactic known as immediate action rapid deployment tactic. The tactic calls for a 4-person team to advance to the site of any ongoing shooting. Optimally, a diamond-shaped wedge, but even with just a single officer, if more not available, Police officers using this tactic are trained to move towards the sound of gunfire and neutralize the shooters as quickly as possible. Their goal is to stop the shooters at all costs. They will walk past wounded victims as to prevent the shooter from killing or wounding any more. David Cullen has stated, the active shooter protocol has prevented several successful and numerous shootings for Virginia Tech alone. It has saved dozens of lives. The common thing that I hear all the time is stop the shooting, stop the deaths. That's a very common one where your entire goal is to get in there, neutralize the threat. Once that threat is neutralized and he is secured or they are secured, you can immediately go back and start triaging people, getting people out. A very in-depth look about this. I believe it was in Tennessee recently, the school shooting that occurred. It was a high school. There is actually body cam footage of it, and you can watch it, and it's fucking gnarly. But they come in stacked up just like that. There's 4 of them. They sprint in. One door is locked. They go, fuck that. They immediately double back, start trying to find doors to the second floor. They find doors to the second floor, begin advancing down, and just hearing gunshots directly in front of them. There's at one point they stop and look down at the body of a 12-year-old girl, or maybe like a younger girl. Look down at her who is deceased. They then continue up and around to the right and would engage in a quick gunfight with this guy. Drop him dead. Immediately drop him dead. Secure him. Get him handcuffed. Secure his weapon, and immediately go back and start triaging. They're like, we're not even going to triage this guy. We're going to let him fucking bleed to death. We're going to get everybody else out first. So, how many shootings?
So last year there were 51 that resulted in injury or death. So that's not including any that were like where no one got injured.
Yeah.
As for this year, there have been 23 school shootings that have resulted in injury or death.
So,
which is crazy.
So it's only June.
Yep.
It's 23 already.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's just school shootings. That's not including any other mass casualty shootings.
Yeah.
Such as at malls or anything.
Yeah. I didn't even. Yeah. So it says right there have been 167 shootings since 2018.
There was a statistic that I found. There have been 386 school shootings since Columbine itself.
386 school shootings since Columbine.
In 24 years.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's too many.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So after the massacre, many survivors and relatives of deceased victims' families filed lawsuits. Under Colorado state law at the time, the maximum family could receive from a lawsuit against the government agency was $600,000. You gonna be good?
I think somebody's here probably, or like seeing somebody in the window.
Delivery maybe.
Yeah. Most cases. As I start talking again.
It's okay. They'll stop.
Most cases against the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office and school district were dismissed by the federal court on the grounds of government immunity. The case against the Sheriff's Office regarding the death of Dave Sanders was not dismissed due to the police preventing paramedics from going to his aid for hours after they knew the gunman was dead. The case was settled out of court in August 2002 for $1.5 million. In April 2001, the families of more than 30 victims received a $2.5 million settlement in the case against the families of Harris and Klebold, Maines, and Duran. Maines and Duran being the ones who bought the firearms for the people, for Klebold and Harris. Under the terms of the settlement, Harris's and Klebold's contributed $1.5 million through their homeowners policies, with another $32,000 set aside for future claims. The Maines contributed $720,000 and another $80,000 set aside for future claims. The Durans contributed $250,000 and set aside an additional $50,000 for additional future claims. The families of the victims' shoals rejected the settlement, but in June of 2003, were ordered by a judge to accept a $366,000 settlement and their $250 million lawsuit against the shooters' families. In 2003, the families of victims Fleming, Ketcher, and Robo Townsend, Vasquez received an undisclosed settlements and wrongful death suits against the Harrises and Klebobs. They fucking buried these families. Parents of some of the victims filed unsuccessful lawsuits against film companies, such as the Basketball Diaries, which includes a Dream Team sequence when the student shooting his classmates in a trench coat. In the Basement Tapes, they debate whether or not Steven Spielberg or Quentin Tarantino are appropriate choices to direct films about the massacre. Their home videos always show inspiration taken from Pulp Fiction. Both were fans of the film Lost Highway. Apocalypse Now was found in Harris's VCR. So the Columbine shootings influenced subsequent school shootings, with several such as plots mentioning to it. Fear of copycats has sometimes led to the closing of entire school districts. Since Columbine, over 74 copycat cases have been reported, 21 of which resulted in attacks, while the rest were thwarted by law enforcement, and many of them, the perpetrators had cited Klebold and Harris as martyrs. And with that, we end that story.
Jeez.
Yeah, I don't remember how to fucking even end that mentally.
I don't know. That's crazy. It's just everything about it.
We'll do something fun next week, guys. We'll do one about
Yeah.
like aliens who eat people's assholes through their balls or something.
Yeah.
Or like aliens who like finger blast each other to communicate. I don't know, something
Something.
like a ghost that jerks off into people's ears and shit while they sleep. I don't fucking know. Something funny.
Jerks off in people's ears.
I don't know.
Just something that's not as heavy.
No, I'm just kidding.
Ghosts
We're doing Kids Who Kill Part 3, and it's only gonna get worse. I'm just kidding. We're not doing that.
Ghosts that like sleep apnea, you get head while you're sleeping, like choking.
Yeah.
Ghosts that do that while you're sleeping. Yeah. No, it's a joke. It's a comedian joke. They're like sleep apnea is like you're choking on ghost dick all night because you're.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do something. We'll do something more fun next week. Man, that was a fucking ride. Huh? Anybody else cry? Is it just me?
No,
I'm just sweating.
Anybody?
I was pretty close.
You didn't cry? Nobody else?
I
Nobody
was
else
surprised
cried?
I
It's
didn't
just
cry.
me?
I got close. I
Yeah.
got real fucking
I feel like probably just because you were reading it, you were more like immersed.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was pretty immersed, but like.
Just that fucking line, dude, of just waiting for the bus. I just hated that shit.
Yeah.
Fucking awful. But it is interesting though that the way law enforcement tactics have changed, and that they now do the rapid like deployment, just getting out immediately, charging in to go find the gunman and neutralize them.
As they should.
As they should.
Like if that, they didn't have anything like that, like prior, like any experience with it or anything, but like if they would have done that before, like a rapid response SWAT team or something like that, think how many lives it would have saved in this particular situation, because like the cops got there like decently fast within like before they went into the library and like, killed like where most of the people died and was injured in the library.
Yeah.
There was already cops there on scene.
Yeah, they could have made a rapid deployment to the main entrance, gone up the stairs, intercepted them from the library, could have smoked them as they're reloading or something like that.
Or at least like, draw all their attention to the police and having to like fight themselves out of it as opposed to like drawing their attention to like massacring.
Yeah. Yeah, I firmly agree. And it's shout out to those law enforcement members those personnel who go in there.
Yeah. Because it's
like the ones in that I believe it was Nashville shooting where they went in there and they neutralized the gunman. Virginia Tech, people, things like this where they go in and they fucking hard charge and go smoke the bad guy to try to save lives, even if they may lose their own. Right. Guys are legends.
Because it's a lot easier said than done, because you see these things and you see people, they're like, well, what are the cops doing? They're not even rushing in there. It's like you would never know until you're in that situation. It's a life or death thing, and not everybody has that fucking switch they can flip over in their brain to run into danger.
Yeah.
And so it takes somebody with some fucking balls to do that shit.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know. I feel like if you're a police officer, you should have that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Like-
that's why you become a police officer, because you have that. Yeah.
Because, like, you look at specifically Uvalde.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where
I
they
was going to
just-
bring that up.
They just fucking stood there.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were in the school.
Yeah.
And they just didn't do anything. Like, that whole situation is just something
That I don't even want to even get into Uvalde.
Yeah.
That thing gets me so fucking mad. Everything about that shit gets me so fucking mad every single time. I all I can think of is the guy whose wife was killed working there, the law enforcement officer whose wife was killed, and he's trying to get past the other guys, and he's like, let me fucking go so I can go get her. And they're like, no, stay right here. And then she gets fucking killed. And it's like, those guys aren't your friends, dude. Oh, I hope you know all those guys should be fucking dead to you.
Yeah.
Like,
all of those
guys let your
officers
wife get killed.
just-
Like, I would hard fucking charge in any goddamn building, even if any of you were in there, and I was like, I have to go get them out because there's a gunman, I'd fucking do it, even if you had who knows what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Like, that's just how it should be. The human body, the fucking, like, you should be able to mentally flip that switch if you have to and you're in that kind of position. And I don't understand why those guys were such fucking cowards and didn't do it. Sorry, it's gonna get me mad. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
No, it's a very valid thing to get upset about because it just shouldn't have happened like that.
Yeah, it's fucking bullshit. Yeah. So it was. I was right. It was Nashville. Police department. They went in. They had murdered 3 children and 3 adults, and then that video right there is a perfect example of like how that situation works, like, for law enforcement. And it's just like those guys were dialed the fuck in. Like, they did kind of stutter step when they found the child that was killed. But that next shot went off when they were shooting at somebody else, and they immediately fucking got back online and went there and they neutralized them. And if that would have happened in Columbine, I feel like it would have been a lot different.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of what ifs. Like, what if that school resource officer was in the cafeteria at the time?
Yeah.
What if SWAT, or those first responding officers, they engaged that initial gunfire and they pushed them. They pushed on to Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris.
Yeah.
And maybe pushed them into a room where there was nobody in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a lot of what ifs, but glad they're fucking dead. Glad Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris are dead. It's a shame that they did it by their own hand. I wish the families could have killed them.
Yeah.
I'm the vengeful type. I just wanted to just once. I know you can't do a cruel and unusual punishment. I know we're not allowed to do that, but just once, be like, I'm just pull like an Epstein on it. Just be like, we're gonna unlock the fucking jail door, and I don't know, something's gonna happen. Oh, they're dead. What happened?
Yeah.
Just beat them to death.
Yeah.
Well, that was, if you enjoyed this week's episode, you're a sick fuck. I don't know, man. Jack's barking out there.
Jack agrees.
Thank you so much for joining us on this very heavy episode of Hot Scrapes and Omens. We'll do something fun next week. Probably.
Something not as hard hitting as this.
Yeah, we're gonna do John Wayne Gacy next week.
No.
God damn.
Listen, I need a little bit of a fun break.
Yeah, we're gonna do a little bit of fun breaks. We're gonna have some fun, and then we'll get back into the sad shit again, because that's what true crime is.
Yeah.
But you can, if you can rate us on your listening apps, you can do all that, like, share, subscribe, all that bullshit. You can follow us directly on Instagram at HGOPodcast. You can follow us on Facebook, Hot Scrapes and Omens. You got a crazy story to tell us. You've seen something weird or survive something absolutely insane, email us at HGOPodcast@gmail.com. If you want to follow me directly, you can at I Hunt the Haunted. And check out my Twitch, twitch.tv/IHuntTheHaunted. I'll be out there every so often. So, okay.
You can follow me on Instagram or TikTok at Lunar Thrill. That's about it. That's all I got. I don't really use anything else.
Senor Carrick.
You can follow me on Instagram at Ghetto Feather. Also, last night we just recorded the first episode of the doc that we've done in quite a while. So that's going to be coming at you soon. And if you want to listen to after you listen to this episode, you should listen to that one because it's gonna make you laugh,
Dude.
it's gonna bring it up.
Feel
It's gonna bring the feels up.
On that episode of the doc, I laughed harder than I've laughed in probably months. I laughed so hard I couldn't fucking. I literally fell out of this chair. I was on the ground and I couldn't breathe because I was laughing so hard.
That's what that was. I heard a crash at one point, and I was like, "Are y'all
Could you hear us laughing up here?
Yes,
Dude, I literally was. I was on my fucking hands and knees right here, laughing so hard I couldn't breathe.
the cat was so concerned.
Oh my god,
He was like watching the ceiling.
Charlie Haggard says probably one of the most insane things I've ever heard anybody say, and it's so fucking funny.
Oh yeah, go check that out.
Go check that out. Stay spooky
Stay haunted.
and fuck Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris.
I agree.
Bye.